Does prednisone cause ulcers? This is a really important question because you need to know what the risks are of taking prednisone before you take it, or if you're going to continue taking it, right? And when I was in pharmacy school reading that textbook right there, it talked about how prednisone and other corticosteroids like hydrocortisone, dexamethasone, methylprednisolone, how these steroids cause ulcers. In fact, this is such a widespread belief that when they surveyed physicians in the country of the Czech Republic, 82% believe that steroids like prednisone cause ulcers. But it's not necessarily as simple as that. Let me dive into what you need to know about ulcers, because is it true that prednisone causes them, or could it be something else? Let's find out. So if you take 5 to 7 days of prednisone at a normal dose for something simple like an asthma flare, are you going to get ulcers? No. Like, your chances are incredibly low. So why would there be this belief that prednisone is causing ulcers? Well, they've done studies and they've found that you can pretty much only get an ulcer from prednisone or other steroids if you've taken over 1,000 milligrams of prednisone. Now, to put that into context, a normal prescription of prednisone is somewhere between 5 to 20 milligrams. So in order to get to 1,000 milligrams, if you're taking that higher end of 20 milligrams, you'd have to take it for 50 days. Or if you're taking 5 milligrams, you'd have to take it for 200 days in order to get an ulcer from taking prednisone. And they say treatment must last longer than 1 month. So yes, it is, but is it really? Let's find out more. So they've looked back at large populations to see if a person was taking a steroid like prednisone or another one, or another type of drug called an NSAID. Ibuprofen, meloxicam, naproxen, these types of pain-relieving drugs that are called non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. They got their drug name by not being prednisone, not being steroids, right? We are the non-steroids. So they compared whether the person had been taking a steroid, a non-steroid, NSAID, or neither. And so they looked at these populations. If they'd taken both steroid and non-steroid, just one, just the other, or none. And compared how many of those people had a bleeding peptic ulcer. And if you compare someone who's taken prednisone and ibuprofen or naproxen and NSAIDs with someone who's never taken any of those, this person is 5 times more likely to have a bleeding ulcer than this person. What about if a person just used NSAIDs like ibuprofen or naproxen? How much more likely are they than a person who had never taken it to get an ulcer? 3 times more likely. Specifically, an odds ratio of 3.20. So what if there was a person who only took prednisone, such as a normal dose, compared to a person who'd never taken prednisone or NSAIDs or anything else like that? What is the risk of an ulcer? This is what they specifically said. They said, we observed only a moderately increased risk among patients who used glucocorticoids alone without NSAIDs, with an odds ratio of 1.63. And this is how they concluded. Love it. Just shut them all down. The use of NSAIDs with or without glucocorticoids was associated with a markedly higher risk of peptic ulcers that are bleeding compared with glucocorticoid monotherapy. Here it is. Use of glucocorticoids alone was associated with moderately increased risk of peptic ulcers that are bleeding, which might be causal or attributed to confounding by indication. They think that this smaller risk is actually confounding. It's these are just sicker people in general, so they're going to have an ulcer. It's not the drug, it's like the reason the person's taking the drug. For example, they've got gastrointestinal issues where they're having problems. For example, they're having irritable bowel disease, ulcerative colitis, things like that. Surprise, surprise, and now they have a bleeding ulcer. Okay, that makes sense. Confounding by indication. The drug's not causing the problem, it's the disease causing that problem. That person who never took the drug never had one of those diseases that would cause an ulcer itself, right? So what do you do if you have no other choice but to take prednisone and a steroid, and you're looking at a 5 times greater risk of a bleeding ulcer? Well, there's some thought that taking protective measures against that might be wise. Only if you are forced to take both of those medications. You've talked to your doctor and looked for every other alternative, whether it's a biological, fancy, very expensive, tens of thousands of dollars a month medication, or it's an ancient drug that could be used off-label to help your disease, or it's an inhaler for your asthma, whatever it is. You looked at every other alternative and you're left with, I have so much joint pain. My arthritis is horrific. And if I don't take prednisone and ibuprofen, I literally cannot function in my life. I can't open cans, whatever it is. If you're that person and you're forced to take both, what can you do? Well, potentially in that situation, you can take another medication to protect yourself. That would be called omeprazole or other proton pump inhibitors. Prilosec, Protonix, Prevacid, Nexium, all of these used to be brand name prescription-only medications and are now over-the-counter and still kind of prescription. And so you can take that precaution for yourself to take those medications along with your prednisone. And they're kind of important the way you take them. So generally, when you take prednisone, it's first thing in the morning. But when do you take that omeprazole? You also want to be taking it either first thing in the morning, 30 minutes before breakfast, or 30 minutes before dinner. That way it actually has time to kick into gear and do the work it needs to do properly. If you want more tips like this of how to minimize side effects of prednisone, then you need my Prednisone Checklist. Just click the link below to download it now. It's a free PDF that includes other tips of how to minimize the damage that prednisone is going to do to you. Because if you're still watching, then you clearly have something seriously awful going on in your life, like I did when I was almost bleeding to death and prednisone saved my life. And so I came up with this checklist of things that will help you minimize the risks of taking prednisone. Just click the link below to download it now.